Okay, so now we're going to be watching the Shut Up About the F-35 by LazerPig, sponsored by Ground.
All right, so there were some funding and development issues with the Osprey.
The military?
Yes, incredibly. Sometimes military procurement isn't that good.
Just keep making the A-10, okay? That's all I'm asking. It's good at its job. We don't need the F-35 to do it.
Just talking about the A-10 Warhawk?
Making the A-10, okay? That's all I'm asking. It's good at its job. We don't need the F-35 to do it.
I remember that being what people were saying for a while. I don't know much about the F-35 or whatnot, but I do remember people being like, this thing can't do everything.
I realize that when you're talking about modern warfare, and in particular the weapons and machines of a modern warfare, the average person who wants to talk to me about it with their scruffy beards and their cardigans and their vacant stares,
dude, how'd they get a picture of me? What the hell?
Keen military interest, know as much about it as they do the female orgasm.
That's a myth.
Which
That's
is
not
not
real.
much. And some even claim it doesn't exist. I feel sorry
doesn't.
for straight women sometimes.
It's made up by the liberal
so with
media.
that in mind, discussing something like the F-35, which
you
is being
bonk
built
me.
for a future war in a world where things like suicide drones and smartphones exist and are accessible to things like local militias, is kind of easy to see why the average idiot whose war mind is still stuck in a 1970s concept of combined arms warfare might find it confusing and see it really only as a $1 trillion jet designed to just make a few generals rich and thus are considerably more susceptible to things like this. An article by Forbes.
Alright, the US Air Force just admitted the F-35 stealth fighter has failed. I don't think the US military would ever admit that they failed at anything, so this is obviously clickbait.
Obviously, the most credible website of all the internet, which states that finally the US Air Force has admitted that the F-35 was a bad idea. It's a terrible aircraft, and they're now looking to replace it with a lighter F-16 style fighter designed for dogfighting. And if that was true, that would make Pierre Spray right, and me, LazerPig, wrong. And thus, I would owe him a deep, deep apology. But do I though? I mean, really? Do I? Because I know some of you may find this hard to believe, but this article posted on the internet by an internet site which dominates half my screen with an ad may not be 100%.
Fucking $50? For a full year subscription to Forbes? I don't need Forbes in my life. I'm not paying $50 for that. That could buy me a video game.
Genuine. In fact, in a fit of behavior so uncharacteristic of the mainstream media, this headline, which is the only part of the article most people have read, may be something of clickbait.
No way.
I know! The shock! The horror! Chapter 3 of the 1926 literary classic Winnie the Pooh describes the titular character Pooh Bear and his friend Piglet discovering a series of tracks.
Did the video
which they
change? Why are we
assumed
talking about Winnie?
belonged to a creature known as the Woozle. Yet, as much as they follow these tracks in hunt of the mythical creature, they can never quite seem to catch up to it. Enter the book's protagonist, Christopher Robin, who, after some brief investigating, discovers that the tracks that Pooh Bear and Piglet have been following were in fact their own, and the Woozle does not actually exist. Since then, the term the Woozle effect has been used to describe a situation where a claim is made with little or no supporting evidence, usually in a book or an online publication, which then leads to various other publications citing it as a reference, without checking it or doing any proper peer review. Further publications then cite them as a reference, and so on and so forth until you have a chain of citations that simply reference each other as a sourceable material without...
That's why you always go for primary sources. You always try to get a primary source first.
Ever actually presenting any credible evidence, hence why things like Wikipedia or the fabled r/Ask Historians are so frequently wrong, as their criteria
What? You're
for
telling me
any claim
Redditors
to be
are wrong?
considered credible
Bullshit.
is that it has to have appeared written somewhere in a book. Hence why so many people think the F-35 is a useless, expensive garbage plane, because, well, the press say so, and they say so because, well, the other press say so, and they say so because, well, the first lot of press said so, and then you follow it all the way back down the bullshit tree until you get to the Russian propaganda channel Russia Today. You've probably heard of it,
What?
and its interviews with Pierre Sprey, who until his death was an avid critic of the F-35, and the main source of most of the bullshit you heard about it, despite the fact that he's never worked in the aerospace industry and is more famous for lying about how big and important he was in the development of the F-15 or the A-10 or whatever plane he's claiming he designed today, because one
Hey, having a lack of actual expertise inside of something doesn't stop most people from making a career out of insulting things. Oh, I'm gonna say how bad all these movies are. Oh, cool. Do you have like a degree in filmmaking or cinematography or script writing or anything like that? Have you made movies or anything like that? Nah. I just watch movies. I'm gonna say it's bad because the character did something that I personally think doesn't make sense. Oh, dude, all these games are bullshit and woke and everything. Oh, cool. Do you make games? Do you do all that? You can have an opinion, but I find it weird when there are all these people who are like, "Oh, I'm a professional critic of it." Oh, cool. So you've been in the industry before, though. No, they haven't. They just say what everyone else will say, and then they get clicks and they make money off of it. He's just that, but without a YouTube channel.
he worked in the closet in the basement of the Pentagon as an advisor to an advisor to an advisor to an advisor to the Secretary of Defense, who had absolutely nothing to do with the project, and whom Wikipedia still credits as the developer of the A10 because, well, it was written in a book. I mean, what more proof do you need? Of course
Books
it's
never
true.
lie.
Someone wrote it down. Hi, it's post-production and very tired LazerPig here. Quick note, at the time of writing the script for this video, Wikipedia still credited Pierre Sprey as the designer of the A10. However, over the past month, there seems to have been quite a bit of back and forth, and it seems as of the 1st of this month, all references to Sprey have been removed from the article. Though some people do seem intent on putting it back up, so it may reappear at some point, and, you know, it's Wikipedia. Part of the reason behind this was really that the only real source for Sprey's involvement was the autobiography of John Boyd, who was one of the major players in the reformist movement. Now, this book was published after Boyd's death, and the author never actually spoke to him, only his friends and colleagues, including one Pierre Sprey, in which he claims Boyd became interested in his work because of his involvement in the A10 program, which is not true. They were locked in a waiting room together. But that would mean that the only source for Sprey's involvement in the A10 program
But it's in a book.
is Sprey himself, in a book in which he cites himself as a source, making him the ultimate Woozle. Can't make this shit up. Anyway, back on with the video.
He would be such a good YouTube grifter. He would have excelled at it if he had lived to do it or something like that. He would have done it so well. So well.
Once you get to that point, you start to realize that pretty much every claim, and I mean pretty much every claim, like 99% of them, made about the F-35 is simply a chain of Sprey saying something for money on a Russian government-funded propaganda channel, and then every minor or major publication tacking its own thoughts and opinions onto it and citing each other as a source in the world's dumbest game of Chinese whispers. Until we get to the point where a well-meaning podcast about engineering disasters advocates for the continued project of an aircraft that hasn't been built since the 70s, has killed more of its own soldiers than every other US aircraft combined, suffered the most losses out of any modern US aircraft, and is hilariously outdated, as it requires its pilots to fly low and slow and use a pair of binoculars to identify targets, which it frequently misidentifies, is highly vulnerable to shoulder-mounted launchers, and requires a modernization package that is more expensive per unit than a brand new F-35. A plane they don't understand and would stick their fingers in their ear and scream, "La la 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 la, I'm not listening. Meme logic is better than reality because it's more funny and we need their views, la 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 la."
That's how the internet works.
I don't owe Pierre Sprey an apology, regardless of what Forbes or the various podcasters or people in my comment section think. He is wrong. F-35 good. A-10 still questionable if it was ever effective to begin with, and is generally only remembered fondly by people because big gun go brrr.
Actually, I used one of these in Tom Clancy's Hawks, and it was fun and good, which means in reality, the Warthog is good and fun and awesome. That's my source. My source is video game. I'm obviously joking, but for real though, if you haven't played Tom Clancy's Hawks, you know, give it a look. It's on Steam. It's fun.
Please continue to write that in the comments. It only gets funnier after the 600th time. But let's say you're not me. You're Sebastian, the average femboy that infests my Discord. How do you, as just a regular guy in your programmer socks, spot a
Cute little
Woozle
pig
in the wild? How do you know when media bias and lazy journalists have wrapped you up in their little tentacles? Well, buckle up, boyo, for I have a question for you. Has this ever happened to you?
No. What the?
Welcome back to Piggy Springer. My son saw a swastika and now he's gay.
Yep, that's how it happens.
My son saw a swastika and is now gay. Mom, I told you I'm 24 now. I just want to go out and drink beer. What has America done? Hi, I'm LazerPig.
What is
By day,
happening?
Mild-mannered pig-shaped human, but by night, equally as useless, but, you know, more drunk. We've all been in that situation where we've been forced to return to the nest for the holidays and be confronted by the entire family who you never talk to. Your grandma makes a vague, racist comment about people with blue hair. Your mom...
That was comedy gold? I was confused, but it was good. I'll give it it was comedy good. It was good. I wanted more of it. Can we make like a more side piece of him doing like a talk show host?
Mom tries to defend them out of embarrassment because she took an online class in wokeness, and your dad picks up the newspaper and says the whole thing has something to do with 5G or trans people or single mothers or barcodes or whatever.
5G makes you
trying to make us all blame so we don't have to take personal responsibility for our actions. It's not your fault. It's never your fault. It's them, the other people, the liberals, the gays, the neo-Nazis, boomers, capitalism, communism, I don't know, whatever. And only when we finally get rid of all of these people can we get back to normal and you get your just reward. Even
Exactly.
if deep,
They're not
deep
like me,
down,
they're the problem.
You know they'll just find a new enemy to distract you with, because as long as
Make not war love. Okay, did anyone else read this that way? Make not war love? I know it's supposed to be make war not love, but it's kind of like the don't dead open inside. Why did you write it like this? Why did you... I am strong. Stop. Born this way. Yes, girls, California. These are some weird stock signs.
you're scared and angry, you'll keep buying newspapers, or subscribing to news services, or just clicking articles because of their catchy clickbait titles that trigger that deep emotional scar you have locked in your brain that causes you to be halfway through thinking about the comment you'll post before you've even fully read the title that you'll share with all your dumb friends on Twitter like you fucking know anything. Now look down at your filthy, disgusting hands, gaze into your broken,
I don't do any of that.
soul and ask yourself the question, there has to be a better way. Hi, I'm LazerPig. Do you wish there could be a better way? Well, now you can. I'm here with ground news. Don't let the name fool you. It has nothing
This has
to
been
do
an
with the
ad?
ground, sadly. You are not newsworthy, Ground. Ground News is not a disgusting mainstream media news network, but one of the first non-biased news comparison websites. That's right! With Ground News, you can actually read the news without any
Impossible.
of the bullshit. Finally! Manipulative algorithms? Gone! Media bias? Stopped! Echo chambers and confirmation bias? Ah! What even is that? And it was founded by a former NASA engineer, making her more qualified to
I thought he was about to say it was formed by a former Nazi. My brain was like, what?
talk about the F-35 than pure spray. Ground News. Not only is every article sourced,
Oh my god,
it
it's
also
British
estimates agenda bias on topics based on who else
I
is
say that just
covering
because
them
of
with
his
these
looks, and
handy
he has
little
funny
French
hair and he's
flags.
blonde.
So you know if stories are more biased towards the left or the right or the center depressing part. It even highlights potential media blind spots, letting you see what the man is trying to stop you finding out. Ground News. It will even tell you your own media bias based on what you read, or with their free online quiz. But best of all, there are no judgments. No one's trying to manipulate you to one side or the other. It's literally just about transparency. They just want you to read the news. Ground News.
Oh my god.
I'm so excited about Ground News.
I saw this boat in half.
I saw this boat in half. And repaired it with the power of news. Ground News. Ah yes, the Senate elections. I know nothing about what's going on, but with the power of Ground News, I can not only check related local news in each state, I can even see who's covering what, and even see news stories that would typically be hidden from me. And all of them are sourced right back to the original articles, making it even easier to spot woozles, media bias, and break out of your cognitive bias echo chamber.
Thomas, did you prepare for this incredible news?
Sign up
What
is
the
absolutely
fuck
free.
was that?
It's a
Why did he
website.
show British
You
people?
can just go look at it and read the news that hasn't been spoon-fed you by some disgusting mainstream media pipe organ owned by some fat-ass billionaire from his home on
Pirate Adventure Island.
But if you want access to more features like unlimited blind spot feeds, which is actually super useful, factuality distribution, or even if you just want to support this tiny independent team who is honestly doing a great job. I mean, how many neutral parties can you name that actually commit to remaining objective, especially news sources? Them prices start from 83 cents a month.
Wow.
83 cents.
That's pretty good.
You can't even get a coffee for that. Screw that. Premium service is $2.49.
Yeah, you can.
That's like
Run
a
away before you
penny
pay
less
for
than
it.
the coffee I don't buy because all the coffee places around here are terrible and I brew my own because I'm not a fucking savage. Or you can subscribe
agree.
to Forbes for
I agree. Don't make your own freaking coffee, okay? It'll taste better. It won't have as much sugar in it, and it's cheaper. Okay? I know the joke where they say like, "Oh, millennials like, oh, the reason that millennials can't buy a house is because they buy coffee and avocado toast." No, but it does take up a lot of your money. Okay? Okay, there is a middle ground of saying like, no, there are other issues contributing to the housing market crash, but you're also wasting a lot of money on coffee. Okay, there's a nice middle ground of acknowledging still a problem, but it's not the problem to the problem that you're talking about. No, but they don't want to do that. Just don't drink coffee, lol. Once you start, you can't stop. You get addicted.
$49 and get all your news from one source like your dumbass parents and just assume that they are fully researching all their facts and not just spitballing whatever comes to mind because it sounds vaguely plausible and they're judged by how many articles they write and how many clicks they get
Oh,
and not about how
BoJack
good a
Horseman.
journalist they are. Ground News. Click my link in the description to begin your journey of news and get newsing with Ground News. It will change your goddamn life. Especially if you're that one guy in my Discord who said these magic words. I read InfoWars. I keep myself educated.
Infomores?
Jesus Christ, you need this more than anyone
Isn't that the
else.
one with the fucking
Anyway,
turn the freaking frog
Pierce
skate?
Gray and other comedy self-proclaimed military experts were invited onto Russia today to speak in English and be broadcast in English, and no one found this slightly suspicious on how shit the F-35 is. And since then, we've had a collection of
Wait, they don't
blog
speak
posts,
English in
Twitter
Russia?
accounts, and various web news sites that all continue to propagate the same rhetoric without ever actually checking if it's true. Say it with me now. The F-35 cannot maneuver, it cannot carry missiles, it's really expensive, it cannot defeat the Destiny in a dogfight, it costs over £1 billion, it can't... Of course, it's all just a woozle. Spray cannot back up anything he ever said, and would often refuse to do so, and when he did, his source was, well, himself, and the qualifications and experience he pretends to have, and projects that he had nothing actually
shaved
to
your
do
eyebrows.
with. Fun fact, in all the documentation I've seen in regards to the development of the F-15, which is when the reformers were in their prime, Spray is mentioned exactly once. During a meeting to discuss contractors for the F-15's electronic systems, Spray reportedly barges in and demands that the F-15 be canned in favor of his own design, the F-XX. It's a cool name.
Double X.
It's
almost
really
like
an
triple
aircraft
X.
design per se. It was just a list of things that he wanted removed from the F-15 which he felt were unnecessary. I'll list what some of these things were. The navigation equipment.
Why?
The bulletproof cockpit glass.
Why?
The ejector seat. The bomb and missile racks, or I should just say missile racks. The afterburner, the radar, and the fuel tanks. I'll briefly explain that last one. The fuel tank thing was a John Boyd thing. He fully believed that an aircraft should only have fuel for the dogfight and nothing else.
What?
And any extra fuel a plane might need to, say, go somewhere, like, invade a country, would be done via external drop tanks, which obviously the plane would drop the second it encountered an enemy, blow up that enemy with its superior maneuverability, and then ditch in the field after running out of fuel.
I mean, interesting
Boyd also
idea.
didn't kind of anticipate that, you shoot down that fighter and then another fighter shows up and you have to fight that one as well. This is kind of why the reformers, started to get laughed at.
That makes sense why that's
but
bad.
Spray wanted to take all that useless shit off the F-15 and replace it all with a radio you could buy in a hardware store. Because, it's a radio. It does what radios do. A completely unsecure commercial radio in a military aircraft. What could possibly go wrong?
It's so stupid, the enemy would never think of it, though.
Because it's the best weapon, obviously, and stick that onto what is essentially a MiG-21. He was laughed out of the room. So, in regards to the Forbes article, no, the Pentagon, the US Air Force, or pretty much anyone else for that matter, has not admitted the F-35 was a failure. The whole thing, if you actually read the article and kind of read between the lines, is about how now the Air Force is seeking a potential replacement for the F-16, to be used as a less expensive trader and patrol craft, and to give pilots their needed air times, well as, perform low-risk missions in times where, using an F-35 just wouldn't really be necessary, while maintaining the same kind of stealth capabilities, as well as use the more modern, up-to-date missiles that are currently under development, but also to sell to Eastern European nations who can't quite afford to buy into the F-35 program.
You get a
All of
discount
whom are now
one.
suddenly very interested in replacing their old Russian jets for some weird reason. The ungrounding of this article and the propagation of the bullshit that the F-35 has somehow failed is on the work of one Dan Ward, another proud
That guy has a
member
really
of the
punchable
Reformers
face.
cult and author of the book The Simplicity Cycle, which obviously gets a plug. And with a book like that, I'm sure you could understand why the existence of a complicated fighter jet might.
All right, why does this look like a book that would be about the Germans in World War II? Is the way the white and black is laid on this with the red background, and it looks like it's like a swastika type thing. This just looks like it's some type of Nazi book for some reason. Why does it look like one of those? I was gonna say it looks like a politically motivated book. It literally does. He picked the colors and the design that would make me think this is a politically motivated book.
Confuse him. The engineering motto of keep it simple, stupid is something that, is a very good lesson to learn for engineers, but basically it boils down to simple things to do simple tasks, i.e. don't Rube Goldberg a machine that is overcomplicated for no reason, like these fucking rechargeable shoes. But the concept of keep it simple, stupid kind of falls apart when you have to apply it to the idea of building a stealth fighter that can operate as an interceptor, ground attack aircraft, bomber,
that doesn't
hover,
look real.
land and
Is that a Harrier? Is that a Harrier jet? Why does it look like someone's dangling it with a string? It doesn't.
Fighter that can operate as an interceptor, ground attack aircraft, bomber, hover, land and take off from carriers, and operate in a hostile environment where things like lasers, drones, and over-the-horizon hypersonic stealth missiles exist, while staying combat relevant for the next 50 years.
That was the F-35, okay.
To perform all these roles and do all these things, but because that is what an aircraft needs to be able to do to stay on top of a modern battlefield. Do you see the problem? I mean, how do you do all that in a simple way? Because if you can figure that out, if you can build that kind of plane that's cheap and simple, then congratulations. The US Pentagon would like a word. Here's $1 billion from the US black budget. Shut up and go do it. Prove it. In theory, it's very easy to demand things be kept simple and cheap, but in practice, the world does not quite work like that. And no, it can't be done just by putting bigger engines onto an F-15. You can't just keep upgrading legacy aircraft and expecting it to work indefinitely. That's not how anything works. It's like putting a new hat on a dead horse. It's a new hat, yeah, but it's still a dead horse.
Hey, it's a fucking good-looking dead horse.
Dan does make a good point, and he is right. The F-35 is an expensive plane, especially to run. It's a high-end fighter, and if you have limited high-end fighters, you don't want them in places where they are simply being wasted, especially if all it's doing is giving pilots their needed airtime to remain qualified. That role has always been performed by the F-16, which the Air Force stopped purchasing in 2001 and now consider fully outdated. And no, as I said before, it's not easy to just update these things.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, we're talking about the F-35. What happened, and then there's the F-16. What happened to the F-17 through F-34? I'm sure the numbers don't mean that is like the 35th generation of it. Maybe it's probably like the engine type or the guns or stuff like that. But I just always find that really confusing when I hear about like the F-16 and then the F-35. It's like, what happened to all the ones between it?
There is a flip side to making things cheap, and this is where people like Dan Ward have their failings. In his first book, Dan penned the idea of the FIRE system. Fast, inexpensive, restrained, elegant.
That is a terrible acronym. I thought it was going to be financially independent, retire early. That is the only FIRE acronym that I'm aware of, and I love it. That's a good idea. That's a good one, but fast, inexpensive, restrained, elegant. I guess it's meant to be like, these are the 4 things it needs to be. But this reads horribly.
As if style has something to do with combat effectiveness. I think he just needed an E, and he couldn't really think of anything else. I mean, what else do you... Fast,
elegant,
inexpensive, restrained, elephant? I don't know.
Okay, wait. Fast, inexpensive, restraint, erectile. Make it look like a dick. Efficient! Yeah, efficient makes more sense. Yeah, but efficient. Yeah, that is a better E word. Yeah, it should be efficient. Elegant. What? But hey, dude, it's one thing to beat your enemy, but if you're not looking good while doing it, are you even in a war? Okay? Oh, cool, you won. Yeah, but you were ugly while doing it, so you lost the war. You gotta look good while doing it.
His belief is that technological innovations can be acquired by small teams with small budgets on short deadlines much faster and with less expense, as the limited time and budget forces the team to concentrate on the sole problem without getting distracted and adding extra features, which he believes engineers will simply add on a whim.
Side note, Go back.
Without getting distracted and adding extra features.
I love these things, these giant, like, building-sized excavators. Oh, these things are so, like, the size, this is so much bigger than it looks. Oh, I love these things. I know it doesn't make any sense, but I want one of these to be like a weapon of war, where you just put tons of guns on them. And then, like, you just deploy it into battle, and it's just a mobile battle fortress. It would be destroyed immediately, but it would be sick. Oh, something about big shovel machines. Oh, I love them.
Which he believes engineers will simply add on a whim if they're too relaxed. You'll note here Dan Ward has never worked as an engineer on a design team. He worked in equipment testing. He now works as an advisor to a company that leases out management advisors to military contractors. You'd be amazed how many reformers seem to work exclusively as advisors, not to the military, but to third-party
Ghost Riders too?
Or to their friends who sneak them onto inflated Pentagon budgets via the back door, so they can pretend their stupid ideas have more credibility because, hey, look at all these experts that agree with me. In one of his many publications, this one titled The Simplicity White Paper, Dan quotes
Hang on. I need to do this. Oh, shit. Go back. Okay. Now it's just called Simp. Simp. There we go. Dan Ward Consulting. Simp. Boom. I fucking got him. Oh, I got him. Take that, dude.
What's the following?
The pursuit of complex technology has resulted in the production of weapons that are high in cost, few in number and questionable in effectiveness.
That is a quote from Fighter Mafia member Franklin Chuck Spiney in his 8-hour-long briefing, Defense Facts of Life, which would become the manifesto for the reformist movement. It argued that simplistic weapons had historically always been more effective than complex ones, and the US Air Force's obsession with complicated high technology versus the simplistic, rugged weapons of the Soviet Union would lead to
Yeah, okay, simple made more sense when you weren't dealing with the level of technological capabilities that we're dealing with now. Like you said, we have radar. There are so many things you have to have countermeasures for, that you have to have preparations for, that you can't just be like, oh, we'll be simple. This made more sense where it's like, oh, you can make a complex thing, or you can make something that goes really, really fast or shoots really, really hard. Back in the time where you don't need countermeasures. That's not today. It's like, oh, what if we just make it simple? We make the thing go really, really fast. Well, there are things that will still shoot it out of the sky. You know, or it'll still be picked up on radar. You have to take into all these things into consideration nowadays because there's just so much tech out there now. And if you're going to go more simply, they are kind of doing that with how about we just take the human out of the control of it or the human out of the cockpit and utilize drone technology, which is going to be a more and more prevalent thing within warfare. And it's going to be terrifying. We're going to give guns to robots. The humans will, at the beginning, humans are going to use those drones. They will control it. But eventually, there will be some AI capabilities out there. One thing I will say, this is completely off topic of it, but I like that there is an idea of getting drones that are able to take humans that are injured or soldiers that are injured off the battlefield. That way, like if a person gets hit, you have to take at least 2 other people off the battlefield to get that injured soldier out of there. But instead of doing that, you just have a drone do it that can pick them up and put them on a gurney that it is controlling itself and get them off the battlefield. And you still have 2 more soldiers that you wouldn't have had originally still in the fight. I like that one. I like those ideas more so than the dystopian ideas of giving them guns, which is definitely going to happen and already is happening to some extent, obviously. But you know, I like the ones where it's just about healing humans.
To the country's inevitable doom.
I welcome our AI overlords. I don't.
Was of course the F-15, which was under development at the time. Spiney and the other Fighter Mafia members wanted the F-15 to be a radarless gun plane. The Air Force ignored them, and the F-15 went on to become the most successful fighter jet of all time, which at the time of recording still holds the highest air-to-air kill-to-loss record at 105 kills to 0 losses.
Damn.
Dan, of course, ignores this and goes on to complain about the complexity of the F-15 over the simplicity
Gibby,
of the
you
F-16,
fell out of the jet!
Claiming that the mythology of keep it simple, stupid meant that the F-16 had a development time of just 8 months, compared to the 13 years of the F-15, failing to understand, of course, that much of the technology used on the F-16, including the infrastructure that utilized in its creation, such as wind tunnels, was the result of the development of the F-15. The F-16 was not a project that ran alongside the F-15 on a more constrained budget, and in fact came out much later, development starting in 1974, 2 years after the F-15's first flight, and used much of the same technology and expertise that had been developed.
When asked to fight, if they just said no, they don't want to fight.
Well, we'll see. What if it's scary. What if the AI does want to fight? What if it does that? I would be more terrified if it did want to fight. Imagine you tell an AI, hey, stand down. No. Oh, shit.
For the F-15, the F-16 had been developed as a completely independent project. It would have probably taken just as long on just as high a budget. Dan Ward, of course, ignores this because it would defeat his point. Ward's inability to differentiate between unneeded technology and technology he doesn't think is needed is why people like him and the rest of the reformers don't work in the military, and why videos like this need to keep being made, to remind you all that the mainstream media is not a credible source as it once was.
Yep, true.
Subscribe to Ground News. But Ward was not hired for his expertise. He was hired because he is a walking flesh Woozle production machine. Everything he says sounds credible and has that ring of truth to it, which is great if you run a management advisory company and want to show off your credibility to stupid people who need management advisors. But like the rest of the reformers, he has absolutely no idea what he's talking about, is not qualified to even understand the basic principles of what he is talking about, and his arguments come entirely from thought-terminating cliches. I swear to God, if another person looks at me with that same shit-eating grin and says, but jack of all trades, master of none, in relation to the F-35,
But
I may
isn't that not even the complete quote? Jack of all trades, but master of none. Something something. Isn't there even more to that quote?
suddenly start advocating for mandatory IQ tests and the death penalty.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay, this
Mandatory
annoys me.
IQ tests.
I'm just going to rant for a second here. The phrase jack of all trades, master of none is supposed to apply to people who spend all their time learning new trades and skills as opposed to just focusing on one thing and mastering it. It doesn't really apply to a machine that can do two things. It's like claiming you need to drag a garden shed full of tools along with you on a camping trip because your Swiss Army knife is a jack of all trades and therefore not specialist enough for your needs. And now suddenly
okay, the full quote is jack of all trades, master of none is better than a master of one. Yeah, depending on what it is. Yeah, it's a multi-layered quote.
Everyone else is pulling straws and who has to share a tent with you. So when it comes to the F-35 and refuting the claims many make about it, I could tell you how important modern computers, in particular data link, which older aircraft don't have, has become, or how difficult it is to program jets from the 70s to work with modern missiles, which is the equivalent of trying to install an RTX 3080 onto a fucking ZX Spectrum, or how big a factor stealth has become in recent years, how detection range has become the deciding factor in who wins an engagement, not maneuverability. How modern-day radar systems have nullified the anti-radar tactics employed by pilots in the 80s and 90s, even if they still do work in DCS world. Shit. How helmet-based systems have meant that a plane no longer needs to point at whatever it wants to target, and how data link with drones means that aircraft can now fire at targets with missiles as equally as stealthy as they are from over 800 miles away, never showing up on the enemy's radar because they never actually entered the fucking country. In any future war, swarms of aircraft will fight battles, never having seen their opponents. Eyes almost entirely focused on a computer screen, information sent to them via systems on board drones and AWACS systems hundreds or often thousands of miles away. And
Wait, pause. So something I've always found interesting, though, is that as war technology gets better and better and better, it makes it you see less and less of the people you have to end the lives of. Because like way back in the day, you had to like literally get in their faces and like bash their skull in and stab them and slice them and cleave them. Then they've invented the bow and arrow, and then later on the longbow and all that. So then you're just like shooting a guy from really far away. You still kind of see them. They're over there. And then we just get more and more and more advanced. And then you have drones where it's like, okay, there's a thing, there's a blip on the thing, shoot it. And it's like a vaguely human shape. And then it's just going to get more and more where you're just shooting numbers on a screen. Warfare just continues to make it easier and easier to psychologically kill. And it's terrifying. Like, war is fascinating and terrifying, obviously. And so, and then eventually we're just going to have it where no human has to even look at anything that they're shooting. Drones will be part of it. And then just confirm the kill with a drone. Yeah. Yep. The most effective method of winning a war is minimizing attrition, so you don't want things in between the enemy and your soldier. Yep, not true. Just throw rock slings were dangerous on the battlefield for a long time. You still had to see like that's a person over there. You know? Still had to see them. Yeah.
Destruction of those systems will take priority over enemy aircraft. But that doesn't sound cool.
Oh, wait. Also, then the invention of like armor, and now with like armor that you see, it's like, oh, like, yeah, that's a person, but there's like 1,000 of the same person because they all look the same. It's just, it's cool. Also
bring the image most of us will see in their mind of World War III, the dogfights, etc., what is known as the Top Gun factor. So it's kind of almost dismissed that this is reality. Instead, the ego accepts the possible of the fantasy and tries to justify it through references to past wars and the various buzz pieces and headlines that they know about, and forget that the Korean War and Vietnam were over 60 years ago, and thus the lessons of Korea or the lessons of Vietnam that the gun always beats the missile, bullshit. The maneuverability of old Russian jets, etc., are now all completely irrelevant. Because modern war, That shit's complicated. It's easier, far easier in fact, to think that all the old fighter mafia bullshit from the 70s and 80s is still relevant, because that's easier. And that we should judge modern fighter jets on 60-year-old standards against jets that were built for a completely different style of warfare. It's easier to sit back and think that military procurement is a circus designed to channel taxpayers' money into a general's retirement fund, because my mate Kevin, who was in the Marines and drove a truck around, slacked off half the time, smoked a fuck ton of weed, and never really advanced beyond basic, says so. And the military has unfortunately no short supply of underachievers who sat around in reserves and like to complain about everything and anything, thinking they know a little bit more about us disgusting civilians because they were actually in the military. And what branch did you serve in? Ha ha ha, thought so, smug Luke. To put it simply, in the most simple language that I can think of, and I tried doing this with a group of English people in a pub, and it worked on them, so if it doesn't work on you, dear Christ. The F-15, the 16, the A-10, and whatever, is to the F-35 as the crossbow was to the gun. I mean, the gun was loud and expensive and very difficult to use. It was also not particularly accurate and couldn't be used in the rain. I mean, we're talking very early guns here. So why would anyone want one when you have this elegant, quiet, simple weapon that can be knocked out by a half-decent craftsman in a basic workshop in about half a day? And the ammunition is literally just sharp sticks, which are everywhere. Any idiot can pick one up and use one. Guns are an expensive fad. The crossbow has always worked for us in the past. History says so. And so many people believed that. I mean, there are examples of generals throughout medieval Europe refusing to use guns and sticking with the crossbow, right up until about 1503 and the Battle of Seringola, where about 9,000 of the most powerful troops Europe had to offer, with about 40 cannons led by one of the best commanders of the day with a complete tactical and numerical superiority, lost because his opponent had guns.
Hell yeah! Yep.
In spite of all...
Same thing. Pretty much the same thing is said about all the technology. Like, I think if I'm going to pick something that I can relate to a little bit more, it's like VR. VR is a fad. The metaverse is a fad and all that. It's not that good right now. It's going to get better. Gibby, stop getting shot down out of the sky. It's going to get better, though. In VR gaming, in the quote-unquote metaverse, as much as I fucking hate that name, I do think it's the future of a lot of things. I do think it's going to be a lot of things. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. More technology is going to be added to it. And I think the metaverse is going to be a thing that introduces a lot more brain rot and is going to be very lucrative. Because imagine the metaverse being a big thing that people really enjoy, and they go in, it's like Second Life, but realistic and everything like that. And then you're going to have people who are going to make a lot of money making literally just cosmetics for your character in this, whatever the metaverse will be called in the future and stuff like that. Like 100 years from now, people will make like, what do you do? Oh, I own a shop. Oh, where? In the metaverse, where you can then buy new cosmetics, and fashion will rotate in the metaverse and everything. It's going to be like Ready Player One. It's going to be cool and also scary. So, hey, welcome, Catford. Welcome. Ghost, is your human puppet being a good protractor form? Ghost, the human form's being good.
All their apparent drawbacks, guns could do what crossbows couldn't, which was penetrate heavy armor, and like cover and even shields. It made the concept of armor and shields completely obsolete, which is why armies around this time kind of stopped using them. And there are numerous examples of this happening all across the world. Guns had changed the face of war, and heavy armor and swords and crossbows, the old ways, just didn't work anymore. This was the dreadnought effect, something I've spoken about before. A period of transition where a single new invention changes the rules of warfare to a point where established conventional wisdom no longer applies. And in a way, that's where we're at with the F-35. War has evolved beyond what conventional wisdom and that tiny reptilian part of everyone's brain that tells them that fighter jets are awesome can logically process. You can't explain to the common public that blitzkrieg is not a battle tactic that works anymore in a simplistic enough way that fits into a Twitter post. I mean, people compare the militaries of nations.
Wait, go back. I want to read that.
Simplistic enough way that fits into a Twitter post.
Blitzkrieg is not actually a tactic per se. It's meant lightning war and was commonly used as a slur by the German generals to describe how quickly Germany would need to win a war due to their supply issues. It has nothing to do with infantry supporting tanks or whatever. Interesting.
I mean, people compare the militaries of nations by looking at numbers, and the bigger number means obviously the better army. You know,
not true.
The speed and armor of their
not true. I mean, look, like the way that the Chinese military and the United States military, outfit their even common infantry units is vastly different. The Chinese will, this might be outdated, but from what I knew a few years ago was that they would put more emphasis on their numbers. And even then, some of the military generals or whatever they are in China would not outfit their soldiers with as good of body armor. One, because obviously it's going to cost a lot more because they have more numbers. But also they felt that if they feel like they can take a hit, they are more likely to do stupid stuff. Which, because then they're like, oh, I can take a hit, which I don't think that really makes any sense. It might be more that they're trying to have a cost-saving measure. I don't know. But then the U.S. will put more outfitting on their single infantry units because they want them to be able to get hit, keep fighting, or get hit and then get off the battle and then get healed, and then they still have a trained military unit that they can then redeploy when they get healed up. So, you know, numbers doesn't always matter either. It's the tech, it's the training, it's the funding and everything.
Power of this tank are so much better than that tank, therefore this tank wins the battle. Just kind of fucking bullshit. But war doesn't work like that. You know, since Russia invaded Ukraine, we've had a number of popular media sites asking, why were the experts so wrong? The people who predicted that Russia could wipe out Ukraine in 48 hours were left scratching their heads and searching for the copium explanations that exonerated them from looking like an idiot. And this is where all the bullshit propaganda tropes come from, you know. Oh, they haven't deployed their elite units yet, or oh, this is only a tiny part of Russia's army. We've yet to see the full force come crashing down, or, you know, this is all part of Putin's grand master plan. Just you wait and see. Etc., etc. Because Russia's numbers are bigger than Ukraine's, so logically they should be able to win, and they aren't, and this is confusing for them. And what these articles never really seem to consider is that the answer is not that the experts were wrong, it's that the experts, or the experts they were listening to, were not actually experts. The term military analyst is not a legally protected term. It's not like doctor. It's more like economist. You know, any asshole can start calling themselves one and fart out a vaguely plausible opinion on the current situation. Real experts, the real analysts, and the Russian studiers, and, you know, people who actually knew what they were talking about, knew this was all going to happen from day one. And many said so, but they were ignored.
Yeah, one thing I love is that people, I didn't know this, but military, like real military experts that worked within like the United States, Pentagon and the White House and everything, they were pretty certain of the date, of the timing that Russia was going to try to annex more of Ukraine, or maybe not Ukraine, but not the first time. Maybe they annexed Crimea? It's Crimea. But they were going to invade part of Ukraine again. Because it seems like every time we had a Winter Olympics, it was during that time frame when Russia was up to some bullshit. So it was kind of like, from our intel that we have and from past actions and everything, he's going to do it again. It's like, it's been another 4 years and the Winter Olympics has happened in our intel groups and everything. He's going to do a fucky wucky in Ukraine. And they were right. They were right. So it was very interesting. It was interesting. Russia is always up to some bullshit. That is also true. But yeah, Ukraine being funded by, or being supported by the United States, Poland, France, and other parts of Europe as well, and using the intel that they have, and Russia not being as military powerful as people expected. Yeah, definitely supported all all of that. Also, Ukraine, up until this point now, which I think they're now invading part of Russia itself, but at that point, Russia was doing a defensive war, which is easier than an invading part. So defending is always easier than invading itself. So Ukraine had a lot of numerous advantages that some were expected and some were, we have ideas from real military experts, like we have ideas, but we will only have time to tell if we actually are correct on our intel on how formidable the Russian forces are.
Because they offered complicated explanations to a very complicated situation. The reformers, meanwhile, the pretend analysts, the people like
have I seen the new Lord of the
Warren,
Rings anime movie trailer
else
yet? No.
Who, like worked
Check
in
that out next.
third-party advisory companies and sell tickets to lectures, are not experts in military analytics. They are salesmen. They sell simplicity. Keep it simple, stupid means keep the explanation simple, short enough to fit on a headline, and simple enough that even the stupidest person can understand it, so that they can have something to discuss around the water cooler to make them, feel smart again. It doesn't matter if by the time it's gone through that simplification process, it's technically wrong, which is something called hypernormalization. Don't look it up, it's extremely depressing. What matters is that you can sell that idea to the public, and the public love simplicity. They love being able to have an opinion on something without having to be bogged down by the harsh complications of reality. And newspapers, well, they love to sell you that shit. They're selling you opinions that you can redress as your own with absolutely no effort. Simple explanations, which mean you don't have to think too hard, so you can get on with your busy life without letting
Oh my god, that paper's on fire.
Bother you as you and Cassandra meet for lattes that afternoon to discuss those World War I trenches you call eyebrows. And because all these oversimplified explanations are all technically wrong, the same newspapers can throw all that shit at their rivals by fact-checking their explanations. And because those other people got it wrong, well, that means we got it right. Because as we all know, there are two sides and only two sides to any story. Again, ground news. They don't want me swearing, but for fuck's sake, it's the price of a cup of coffee, and they will literally point out media narratives to you. Just do yourself a favor. So,
he really likes
when it
them.
comes to
He
the
really likes round
F-35,
news.
you will hear a lot of shit about it. How it can't dogfight, can't carry missiles, how it's not stealthy, it can't carry the fuel for extended missions, blah 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 blah. Or that things like stealth are gimmicks and the existence of the S-400 nullifies it as a viable tactic. Whatever. All courtesy of some moron whose idea of research is typing things into Google, unaware that the facts and logic they spout out are almost complete fabrications courtesy of a propaganda department. I know some of you all have very strong opinions on the F-35, and there has been a lot
I don't really
of
have that
shit
strong
thrown at it
opinions. It
over
looks
the
cool.
years. And if people would like, I might get into some of those in more detail, but for the time being, take this advice. You don't know anything about the F-35.
What are you talking about? I just watched almost 40 minutes about it from your words. I think I'm an expert now. I'm going to start selling tickets. All right, the link down in the description to buy tickets to my online course where I talk about why the F-35 is bullshit or why it's not bullshit, whichever one you want to hear. Because I am now calling myself a military expert. And you will buy tickets, and I will make money off of you, even though I don't know anything. Yeah, don't be one of those grifter people, okay? Don't do that. Just admit when you don't know something and move on. Like I do.
Or
'Cause I don't know jack shit about
1945 in national interest do not know anything about the F-35, because almost all the information on what makes it such a groundbreaking plane is classified. What is not classified is
It
beyond
goes
their
fast.
understanding, and they
And
make
look-
more money calling everything shit as opposed to great. And the sources of most of those blogs are self-proclaimed military experts whose credibility is barely a step above the average Reddit comment, or in some cases far below it. And of course, propaganda rags from foreign nations backed by their own military development companies looking to sell their alternative companies to budget militaries in Asia and Africa and South America.
What is-
Don't buy their expensive
Come on,
bullshit,
put some
buy our
oomph into it,
expensive
guys.
bullshit.
You're
It's so much
marching.
more rugged and simple, and that's a good thing, trust us. You'll also note that since Russian propaganda channels suddenly all got deplatformed, a lot of these blogs are now suddenly saying nice things about the F-35, almost as if all their sources on just how shit the F-35 is was exclusively, literally, Russian propaganda, or that recent events have created a sudden shift in the public's opinion, and
That's got to be one thing I have to say. I have to give credit to Russia is they put a lot of effort into like propaganda and misinformation and bots online and everything. ever since like 2016 or around that era, they've been doing, unfortunately for us in America, a bang up job at that. I have to give them credit to that because holy shit, they are everywhere.
And all those blogs do is appeal to that opinion rather than state what is factual. Again, ground news. Educate yourself. So no, they don't know anything about the F-35 either. They just spout whatever rhetoric is popular, and half the time they'll just copy each other and never question it until it eventually filters down to people like Blacktail, who quote them as a source because...
Whoa!
Well, I don't want to just call them stupid, but quite frankly, the evidence is overwhelming. So please, admit that you know fuck all. The technology and tactics of warfare has fully surpassed that tiny part of your reptilian brain that says tanks cool. And please, for the love of my sanity, shut the fuck up about the F-35.
Subscribe before diabetes finally claims my soul. Already subscribed, I think. I'll check. I am subscribed. See, there you go. When did he change his picture? No, you're gonna sing. You can't sing that. You can't sing that. No, you can't sing. No, you can't sing. You get a copyright. No, you can't sing that. I'm sorry, I can't. If he's gonna sing a Disney song, he's gonna get me copyright. I don't care if he's off tune. Disney is litigious. Disney will come for me. No. Oh, this was when he still sung his endings. Didn't he lose, like, monetization because of that? Didn't he lose monetization because of that? So he also stopped? Like, I gotta stop it there. But this was a good video. Literally, I'm gonna be honest, many years back, was one of those people who believed that the F-35 was bad. I fell for that propaganda. I did. I remember hearing how, like, oh, the Warthog is better. The Warthog will do what it can. It's better to have a bunch of different planes that can do specialized stuff than have this one plane that's going to do all this stuff and everything. I believed it. It made sense to me with, like, the keep it simple stupid stuff. It's like, it's just corporations trying to make money on all that and the U.S. government wasting all that. But then eventually I grew up and I went to college and everything. So, yeah, he's not wrong because, one, if there's one thing I'm going to trust the U.S. military on, is they're gonna use their money to make good guns. It may be overpriced. They may spend a lot of money on it, and they might have been able to get it for cheaper if they didn't have a little blank check sort of thing going on there. But they will get the results they want. I will give them that. So yeah. But thank you for the recommendation on this. LazerPig's a really good channel. I'm surprised. I thought it was like a million sub channel. I think it's because he doesn't ask people to subscribe earlier on in the video. Literally, I think that's the only reason he doesn't have way more subscribers is because he doesn't put in something of like, hey, like and subscribe like somewhere before the end of the video. Because he deserves like 1 million subs. And he gets millions of views. But yeah, thank you for the recommendation. And also, go check out his channel if you haven't already. Like, subscribe. Comment, come by the Discord, come by the live streams on YouTube or Twitch. And until next time, YouTube, stay awesome.